What is up, dude? It's
Dude,
been a minute.
it has, you beautiful. Now, we can't lead the viewers astray. I have seen you since our last recording on multiple occasions. However, with that being said, we have not had the opportunity to stream. I have been dealing with getting out of the Marine Corps, trying to find a new occupation. Unfortunately, I applied to a bunch of federal jobs, which are on a freeze right now. So those jobs aren't happening. Um, but I've had some,
That's a bummer, dude.
dude, it happens, man. Nothing I can do about it, right? If there's anything that all of us know and most of our listeners know, as far as the guys who have worked with federal government, is we are extremely inefficient.
Yeah, oh man.
Ex but with
It's
that
so
being
bad.
said, I've had some good interviews. I had one today, as a matter of fact, with Missouri Department of Mental Health, looking at trying to take care of and ensure that individuals that have debilitating conditions can get the care that they need through Missouri Health, and that the families that take care of them, the parental guardians, things like that, also have the assistance they need to possibly make life a little easier and enjoyable for them and their families.
Oh, that was cool. That was a cool pitch.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
believed it. You should work there, dude.
I mean, we'll see how the interview went. I could absolutely not get hired, but listen, now they've got a little blurb in here for us.
Speaking of blurbs, somebody sent us something.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. No, they sent it to you.
yes, I did. It is actually something that I thoroughly enjoy for our listeners when we don't have podcasts out, and I don't know how well I can make this scene. But this is a coin from History That Doesn't Suck. And if you ever listen to them, they do it a little bit differently than Matt and I do it. They pretty much do it in story form, kind of what should have been taught to us in high school, but it is
Right.
highly entertaining.
Oh man, I wonder if there was anybody in this podcast that could make that change.
You mean
I'm,
do
I'm a,
our
I'm,
editing and put it in there?
no, I mean teach it that kind of way. I'm a semester from graduate.
You are a semester from graduating. To go into that a little bit, history that doesn't suck. So I spoke with their yeah, I'm not going to drop names. Their producer. So with that being said, um, the professor from History That Doesn't Suck actually attended a Marine Corps educators workshop.
Oh, cool.
Yep. So yeah, the executive producer from History That Doesn't Suck hit me up and sent us these coins for Matt and I. So I have made the promise that when me and Matt produce our coins and we produce some shirts and stuff like that, that we're gonna send them some stuff up. But
Shirts and certs,
um,
baby.
yeah, shirts and certs. But we're gonna do coins and shirts instead of certs. Um, but it does a fantastic job. It's Professor Jackson that runs or that is the voice in History That Doesn't Suck. Does a fantastic job. So when you have some off time and you're not listening to Matt and I, please go listen to them. Um, their executive producer, is awesome. Sent us some stuff and actually let me know that if the professor has any spare time, they could possibly look at sipping some bourbon with Matt and I and doing a show. But they do record like every week, so they have a lot of work, and he teaches, so they have a lot of work on their hands.
But with I'll steal your line here. With that being said,
Mm.
uh, what are you sipping on?
So, I've actually got, and it's very hard to see again. I can't, I guess I can dim the camera for a second, but it doesn't help the screen view. This is Wood Hat Spirits, Montgomery County, Missouri Straight Bourbon Whiskey. It's actually out of New Florence, Missouri. All grains and oak that are used to make this bourbon are native to Missouri.
Very nice.
Yep.
Local shout out.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's dude, I found it the other day over at Dirt Cheap in the local spirits area. And I was like, well, I like bourbon whiskey and I like Missouri, so let's give it a shot. It is only 83 proof, so it is purely a sipper. It's not the, 9700 proof, 110 proof that I'm used to, but it's really good.
Cool. Yeah, see, I just got Woodford. So
That's all right. That's all right. I do still in our bottle have me and yours shared mixture.
okay.
Yeah.
I really like that decanter.
It's a great decanter. Great
Oh,
decanter.
one more thing before we get started on Tiny Man here. Uh
Not tiny.
we have gotten some watch it. We've gotten some feedback, and unfortunately our last episode that we recorded about the Marine Corps birthday, all that jazz, that all got corrupted. We posted that on our Facebook, I do believe, but that's why it's
Yes.
been so long. Also, I think I've got a cumulative like 120 hours of research done on Napoleon for this, so he's taken some time. But we're gonna do some shorter episodes and see how that works out with the editing. We can get them out once a week or once every other week, get us ahead and all that jazz. Um, but yeah, I think that this is a great time to just go over this guy named Napoleon Bonaparte.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. I'll let you take the Matt was kind of our lead researcher on this one. I do have research into this topic. However, Matt was definitely our lead researcher on this topic.
And I didn't even really like we were talking about earlier today. I wasn't too enthralled with the idea of Napoleon. Like he was just kind of like this. Yeah, we kind of know who he is. He's this dude that like took over France and became a problem for everybody.
Yep.
Um, but I was like, you know what? Like I kind of want to go into it. This dude's life is crazy. He is definitely. I'm gonna ruin some things, but not ruin some things because they're pretty self-evident. He he's very good at self-preservation. He is very good about knowing when to speak and how to speak and who to speak to. And he writes a lot. He writes to Josephine. I couldn't even tell you how many times. Just wrote down his memoirs. It's crazy how much is out there on this dude. Um, but he came from humble beginnings. Uh, so there was this island called Corsica. Funnily enough, had been taken over by France actually a year beforehand. Um, before Napoleon was born. So in 1768, that's when France took over Corsica. But what's kind of cool about that is this guy that we know as this big old Frenchman, he isn't even French. He comes from Italian roots of Corsica.
Yep.
So I think he embodies a lot of uphill struggle because of that, which we'll kind of see going into his schooling.
So, I mean, when you talk about embodying Corsica, what do you mean by like what's the idea behind when you say embodying Corsica?
Oh yeah, like they dude, they're like straight fighters. That's all they do. They're just warriors out there. They like to fight. It's clear whenever Napoleon gets into school, that everyone gets into fights. It's just kind of like everybody. And it doesn't help that he's kind of like a second class gentry. So he comes from a known family, but they're not like rich or necessarily famous for anything. His dad, supposedly was supposed to leave him all of this wealth, but whenever he died, he just all gambling debt. So Napoleon had this like half noble name and zero money. Um, and he goes on to like prove how poor he is, I guess is the best way to say it, because he would only change his clothes once every 8 days at school.
Oof.
Um, yeah,
Smelly kid in
which
class. Smelly
yeah,
kid in class,
I
man.
uh, yes, I can't even imagine. But I also don't know how routinely laundry was done back then. It hasn't haven't been able to find a good resource on that. But he only changes clothes once every 8 days, and he made sure to write that down in a letter back to his mom. Couldn't tell you
Hold
why.
on, hold on. Let me stop you there because the rule for underwear is front, back,
Inside
and
out
then
front.
inside out, front and back. So it's
Yeah.
only supposed to be 4 days, dude.
Hey man, double or nothing.
Double it up, baby.
uh, but yeah, he would actually spend all of the little money that he did make on books. dude, he loved to read. Um, he read a lot about Alexander the Great in Macedonia and a lot about Julius Caesar. I
I call it
mean,
Macedonia.
well, I call it Macedonia to ruffle
Because you like
feathers.
and because you like macaroni and cheese.
Sure, buddy. It's kind of like the Scythians, right?
Yeah.
Um, but he only changed his clothes once every 8 days. He spent all of his money on books, and he barely went out to eat. And so he was actually really good at talking his way into like IOUs, funnily enough. And he goes on like later in life to actually pay back a lot of those debts. He goes on and he writes, he's like, once he became first consul, which we'll get to that later, uh, he exited partly on charity. As first consul, he asked one of his interior ministers for news of the cafe owner who had often treated him at Valence. And upon hearing that she was still alive, said, I fear I did not pay for all the cups of coffee that she served me. Here are 50 louis, which is 1,000 francs at the time. Will you give it to her
Woo.
on my behalf? So yeah, dude paid his debts, allegedly. And
Allegedly.
allegedly, I don't know if the money ever got there, but the intention was there, and somebody made sure to write it down.
I
So,
hope that we weren't as corrupt that early on. That actually as consul, that um was that still under Louis the
oh no,
16th?
he was long dead.
Long gone. Long okay, yeah, that's
Yeah,
right. This is
uh,
early Republic days.
yeah. So when he was, so the consul is what he was for. I want to say it was 3 years before he became emperor.
Okay. Okay. Got
Um,
it.
yeah, so he goes from school kid to like lieutenant in the army, and then the French Revolution starts, and then things start picking up. He becomes a general, and then you have his Italian campaign, his Egyptian campaign, and then we go to his consulship,
Oh, the
and then
Egyptian campaign.
ooh,
Yeah.
all of them, they're all good.
Yeah.
Uh,
So now, with that being said, what I was getting at is I hope that the early days of the Republic in his time as consul, that we had found some level of anti-corrupt nature, that that money actually made it to that cafe owner.
it's France, dude. Like,
I know. I hope. I'm just gonna say I hope.
hmm.
It stop, dude. I'm gonna sit here and sip my bourbon and hope that that money made it to that cafe owner.
Oh, it for sure did. Changed her
Yeah,
life
thank you.
forever.
Thank you. Glass half full, man. Come on, dude.
um, but once he got into school, he passed his primary school, or what they would call finishing school, and it was clear he was just going to join the military. So at 16, he went to his military academy and graduated 48th out of 52nd, I do believe.
Woo.
But he graduated in 1 year when traditionally the course was 2 years.
Okay.
Um, he did really well at mathematics, and lacked severely on Latin and German, which I think is actually kind of ironic, because he hated the Germans and he loved the Romans. So of course he wouldn't learn German, and then why wouldn't he learn Latin? I don't get it. But
Well, I
they
mean,
didn't really
to be fair, his overall plan was to make Germany speak French anyway. So, well,
which
not
which
Germanic at the time. It's a split up.
with then Prussia and
Prussia.
all that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But what's funny enough is like he was, I think, 14 before he learned like how to speak French like proficiently, I would say. He
Was
had very
Corsica still
broken,
speaking Italian?
yes, very much
Okay,
so.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So he learned French, and then even throughout his life, he sucked at writing in French. Like he would miss like pronunciations and like punctuation. Like it was just all messed up, just throughout his whole life. Um, which I don't know. I love that. But
Yeah.
when his instructors saw that he was terrible at Latin, they're just like, well, he can't go into the clergy. He's got to go into the military.
Well, I think
So,
destiny awaits, my son.
oh, yes, it does. and he firmly believes that.
Yep.
He ardently believes that. So he ends up getting a commission, and he was in between the Navy and the Army, and he ended up choosing the Army and was offered a position as an artillery commander, or artillery officer, which was like actually super prestigious. Like the I think only 14 out of his class of 153 graduated and were offered artillery positions.
Okay.
So, I mean, you're talking like a small number of dudes get those positions. Um, but he was really good at math. That was the thing. And so he becomes a really proficient artillery officer, which goes into just about every this dude loves the artillery like we love machine guns. Like it's hands down his favorite piece. Like he called his 12 pounders his pretty ladies. Like the 12
Okay.
pound the 12-pound cannons. Yeah, he would call them his
Okay.
pretty ladies. Like this dude loved the artillery.
Well,
um,
I mean, math is and we've all done the FTC plotting boards, planning for it, trying to get your elevation right. I mean, tools back then are way different than the tools we
oh
have
yeah.
nowadays for indirect fire, things like that. So it's impressive to have somebody that great at math, and you look at the campaigns and you look at how well their artillery performed. It's extremely impressive to kind of see that at its most primitive state.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because we got to keep in mind this is 20 years. Like during these campaigns, I'll say are like 20 years after the American Revolution. They're 60 years before the American Civil War. Like this is end stage revolution style fighting, beginning stage like 19th century fighting, which is ultimately just the beginning of trench warfare and artillery for World War One.
Yeah.
I mean, this is where we see that kind of fighting take roots, and then it only gets worse with the American Civil War. Um, so yeah, he ends up becoming a second lieutenant, and then the French Revolution just begins, right? And you got more on the French Revolution than I do, but to give everyone kind of like a brief rundown, everyone was poor, everyone was hungry, the crown couldn't stop spending, and things were just going straight to hell in a handbasket, to be honest.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I have more on the French Revolution. I think I have kind of an insight into and you're going to talk about it here in a bit. Um, but I kind of have an insight into the bourgeoisie, I guess is the
Okay.
best way to pronounce it.
And
Um,
yeah, let's just take a tack pause here. Hey guys, neither of us speak French, okay? There's a lot of French words in this, okay? We're gonna
yeah.
try our best, okay? Like I'm just being honest here.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna say bourgeoisie. Bourgeoisie is the best way that I can pronounce it. Bourgeois for short. Um, they had kind of risen to an economic power and still
Mm-hmm.
what is feudal France, which is very much still governed by even what the colonies were governed by, which is a divine right of kings, which is kind of their ability to take and do with what they will, and they will have a certain amount of people underneath them that gain some sort of political gain from being a clergy or being nobility, things of that nature, right? Like no
Yeah.
taxes. That's a big one. No taxes is a big one, right?
Yeah.
So you've got the bourgeois, I'm going to say it for short, that were pretty much denied political power, but we're kind of seeing the rise of capitalism at this time and economic freedom and this market economy that is making these people rich and they have all this money. They have no tax breaks. They have no say in political power. And at that time, France is shipping goods all over the place. So they're losing in any sort of say so into the embarkation of their goods and how
Mm-hmm.
much they cost and what they get back for them, things like that. So it really kind of becomes a pain in the ass for the bourgeois at this point. Um, Coincidentally, the French Revolution also led to capitalist ideals, and um, it could be argued that the feudal age, the divine right of kings, the monarchy was pre-industrial, and the revolution brought commercial and financial gain to France, and really kind of started that like industrial revolution. Um, it can also be said that prior to that, the feudal regime and the clergy or the estate won, who had power of, putting in the political documents, or saying, for us today, like executive orders, or the Constitution amendments, things like that, bills, if you will.
Mhm.
They blocked a lot of things that would have kind of revolutionized France into that industrial beginnings. Um, and I think that that caused a lot of frustration for that group. And that kind of gave power to the bourgeois eventually, as the stifling activity kind of came to a head. There's more to that, way more than just the bourgeois. To be honest with you, if you look at some of the revisionists, I think that some of them would argue that the bourgeois are not the main cause of the revolution, and I can understand where they come from.
I mean,
There
I'm part of that
is,
group. I would
yeah.
1,000%. Okay, so not to cut you off at the knees
No, you're
here.
fine. Go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Like the social structure of this time, he keeps referencing bourgeois, and the best way I like to explain it is there's three classes, right? You have your first class, your first estate. They call them estates. Your first estate's your clergy. You're like running shit. That's just like you are like tax exempt. You make all this money from the church. You're treated like almost royalty, but not royalty. And then you have the second estate, which is like your nobility. So you have your marquises, your dukes, your counts, whatever the hell else France was using at the time, and they pretty much paid bare minimum on taxes, right? So they were rich, they stayed rich, they didn't have to give their money up to anybody. And then you have that whole third class. That's the 98 whatever percent. Now that I just pulled that number out of every like nothing, but that's about what it is. Um, so a vast majority of the French population is in that third class, and the bourgeois that DJ was referencing is like the upper echelon, like you're upper middle class in today's America, but you're still getting taxed at a percentage that's like ungodly. So like, yeah, you're making more money, but they're taxing you more, and you're kind of pissed off because you're making the same amount of money as the nobility is, but the government's taking it all. And more people are coming into that class, which only just inflation, food famines, which I don't know if you remember, but in that video from Virginia, when I went out there and talked to the Lafayette
Yep.
um, dude, he
We uploaded
asked,
that one.
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
So the viewers know too. Um, I was asking him about how the Marquis de Lafayette felt about America not sending aid to the French Revolution during this time. Um, and instead of sending troops, we sent food. And I asked how they felt about that, and that was like the biggest thing that America could have done. Um,
Hmm.
so, uh, yeah, famine and food prices were just outrageous at this time because, like you said, they were selling everything of everybody's and giving them scraps essentially.
Yep. And it really kind of it just kind of raised tension, right? Especially with the bourgeois who, and King Louis the 15th didn't have really a great track record in and of itself. As a matter of fact, later on, I'll reference him as to what the media called him, which was the dirty old man. Um, and
Hell yeah.
uh, that kind of really transitioned and followed King Louis the 16th. And I will get into a little bit about Our Lady from Austria, Mary Antoinette, when it comes to this, because I also think as well, where I think in the history that I was taught in school, you're almost always taught, oh, the bourgeois are the reason that it happened, and I think
Yeah.
we've kind of transitioned from that. Um, but I also think that Marie Antoinette is also kind of an innocent victim and in the headhunting of the monarchy that is France. I know that you may disagree with me on that.
It's a bold
Um,
take, brother.
dude, so there's some things, and I'll cover some things that are sourced. I went through multiple sources to get to here. But I think that in recent history, we've kind of retaken a look at Marie Antoinette the same way that we re-looked at, hey, did the bourgeois really cause this?
I mean, that's fair. Hit me with them.
Well, I mean, we're not really there. Do you want me to dive into it now?
I mean, we can. I mean, the only thing I feel like we have to hit on maybe is just the general overall feelings. You know, you brought up capitalism, and a big part of this time, and we'll reference this throughout our podcasts from now until forever. But you know, the Enlightenment. You know, you
Yep.
got authors like
Oof.
Voltaire and Rousseau and Montesquieu just putting all of these liberty values and good works and capitalistic ideals out there, and it's kind of taken hold. So that kind of gives it a
Yeah,
little bit better feel here. Because
yeah. So,
like I said, it kind of the way it draws into this is it has the whole liberties attached to it, which the
yes.
the third estate didn't feel like they had any at all
Yep.
because they were just being taxed so much. So I think that's kind of like because of those liberalistic ideals is why Marie Antoinette I still see was hated so much. You know, she might not have been
There's
as
a
cruel, but
yeah, there's a couple things that go with that. But even with that, and you bring that up, what was the symbol of the French Revolution?
oh, you mean like what, Vive la France or the guillotine?
No, 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 no. The statue. What statue or lady was the symbol of the French Revolution? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was the Lady of Liberty,
Oh yeah,
not the Statue of Liberty.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yes, I got you. Yep. Okay.
Now I cannot remember the actual Latin name for it. I did study this in humanities. You're looking it up right now. I'm watching you look it up. Um, but that was the symbol of the French Revolution, and it just kind of it was a symbol to disseminate power back to the people as a republic. America had just won the American Revolution, and it really kind of emboldened a lot of other countries, especially with the fact that they won it against England. Go ahead.
Marianne.
So now that is not any ties to Marie Antoinette. So I don't want to throw that out there. It is not. But I think it's important in Marie Antoinette, the lady from Austria. I think it's important to understand that at 14 years old, and most of her diary and correspondence will back this up. She was pretty content staying in Austria and just living a life away from everything with her family. But in order to solidify an alliance with France, well, she was pretty much arranged marriage into King Louis the 16th.
Yeah,
So,
which is just a real bummer for her, honestly.
yep. So it's important to note that the arrival of 14-year-old Marie Antoinette, uh, as far as the media is concerned in France, dude, she was revealed as like the god of youth and beauty when she first got there. And keeping in mind that this was all to solidify a French alliance with Austria in her hand to the Dauphin at the time, King Louis which would later become King Louis the 16th. And a sort of cult kind of arose in her arrival at first. It was short-lived, I might add, but a sort of cult kind of arose in her arrival. Sorry. Um, there was a lot of things that happened at that Palace of Versailles. Um, King Louis the 16th had unwed sisters that were extremely jealous. They were jealous of her media coverage and the titles that were given to her by the media with, the youth and beauty and goddess and all those things tied to her. Which kind of, I don't watch this show, the wife, but I've had to sit through my wife watching some of the shows. It reminds me of the Bridgertons.
Mm.
is honestly what it reminds me of. And I have not looked up whether or not that Marie Antoinette inspired the Bridgertons, but you have the media spreading all this gossip
I
about
mean, it's
this
kind of around the same
individual.
time. I'm pretty sure Bridgerton's late 18th century, so
Eh,
it would be
I've
around
never,
this time.
yeah, I mean, I've never watched it. I don't know if you watched the Bridgertons.
Dude, like same amount as you. Just
Yeah.
women in my life have watched it in front of me, and I just don't know. Like,
Oh, dude, Sammy loves it. And I'll sit there and ask her questions and she'll like pause it and be like, "Hey, dumbass, do you just want to watch it? Like, I can start it over because you're asking all these questions." Which is Sammy's typical response to me when I get into one of her shows and show that I still love her. And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm gonna ask all these questions." And she's like, "Hey, dumb shit, we can just watch this together." Um,
no, I'm
but
not even that into it, dude. Like,
stop, dude. I don't want to watch
stop
One Tree Hill.
spoilers,
I
spoilers,
don't want,
bro.
yeah, I don't want to watch One Tree Hill. Um, but with that being said, it reminds me of that where you have like this media presence that spreads this gossip and that gossip spreads and sows discontent and hate and just oh man, just viral and like ideas of who people are. And some of that arises from inside the palace, and it is thought that some of that discontent and some of those rumors really started there in the Palace of Versailles from the unwed siblings of
Mm,
King Louis XVI. Now,
interesting.
once he becomes King Louis XVI, their unconsummated marriage becomes the basis for ridicule very early on.
Yes, it does.
And and the media, they're going to publish what sells, man. They have since the beginning of media.
Yep.
So much so that when the Queen, Mary Antoinette, finally became pregnant in 1788, they would publish a series of articles that would name different fathers
Damn.
for the child of Queen Mary Antoinette.
That's
Um,
crazy.
now, and you did bring this up in your research, the saying "let them eat cake." The translation is not actually "let them eat cake." I think we've modernized that to "let them eat cake." Um, the saying is actually "let them eat brioche." Because brioche was a delicacy or a bread or considered a novelty in France that separated really the rich from the poor. And we
Okay.
all know, as what we've talked about prior to, is that the distance between the poor and the rich in France right now is pretty steep. It's a pretty
Yep.
steep hill.
Big
It's
old
not
incline.
yeah, it's not a steady incline. It's a what's it? It's a convex, right? Convex is when you're climbing out, right?
Dude, don't
Yeah.
do this to me.
No, it is, dude. It is. Convex is when you're climbing out. Yeah, concave is climbing in. Convex is climbing out. So it's a convex, if you will. You're
I
you're
will
hanging
not.
on the yeah.
I will stick
You're
to history and no math.
yeah, dude. You're hanging on the underboob of the mountain, if you will, to try to get yourself to the top of the mountain, if you will. Now,
Yes.
with that being said, the phrase can be traced back to Jean-Jacques Jacques, and I'm gonna fuck this up. Rousseau in 1765, 24 years before the French Revolution, and again that it actually translates to "let them eat brioche."
Fun
um,
fact. First fun fact of the day.
yeah, there was a couple things, and like I said, Matt did most of the research for this. And sorry, I have been out in the cold. It's been cold here in the Midwest, and I've
Oh,
been out in the
yeah.
cold more than I care to be shoveling snow and doing things like that. But Matt did a lot of the research for this, so I figured that I would kind of come in with some fun facts here and there, and I would attempt to not necessarily save some people from their historical analyzation, but I would at least bring a little bit more light to the topic. Now, I will finish with two last things. Marie Antoinette did not do herself any favors. She could often be seen in Paris on horseback or being pulled on a sleigh uh, with other men. And what it was perceived by the public was that she was dancing the time away while the poor starved. And this became the public image of Marie Antoinette. the public ate this up just simply due to a recent distaste and hostility towards the divine right of kings and how they're not right and capitalism and
Hmm.
market economy. Look at America, dude. We're now looking at America make all this money, and we're like, hey, dude, we're doing this wrong. Look at all the money America's making, and they're a capitalist market economy. What are we doing? We're hanging on to this feudal agent. They just beat
Yeah,
the British.
yeah. We
Even
we actually we as an American, we played a huge role in the French Revolution. Like we inspired the unliving hell out of them.
yes,
But
yes.
also, with that being said, uh, we're also part of the problem because part of the issues that led to such bad inflation and you know money inequality, economic inequalities, was funding the American Revolution.
Yes, also
So,
our flooding of the market economy. Our flooding of the
oh
market
yeah,
economy on an arrayment of goods did not help at all either. But so this divine right of kings really started to take a hit because prior to this time, you didn't talk bad about the king, man. That's divine right of kings. He's sworn in by, the Pope or the church,
yeah. I mean,
and King Louis the 15th was really kind of perceived as a dirty old man, like I said earlier. And Louis the 16th, unfortunately, Mary Antoinette's husband, did not survive the public opinion that it was associated with his father. It
no.
was, it just kind of carried on. He was seen as some sort of a cuckold or a joke because his wife is
Well,
kind
she's
of
running
running
around
around
with all
doing
these
it.
dudes.
Yeah. And the reality of it is there's no evidence that she was actually doing anything with this dude. She was just living life, right? Now, granted, it is not a good public perception when you're running around dancing, riding in, sleighs with reindeer pulling it and things like that. Not that she was doing that. I'm just giving you an imagery. Um, and sipping Mai Tais in the back of your one horse open sleigh. It's not looking really good. I know I'm late for Christmas. We're almost done with January. But um, basically, what King Louis the 16th at this point is the public looks at him as unable to control his consort, as they say in the history books. Vastly different than 2025 perceptions. I want to add that with female empowerment. The 18th century was not nearly as progressive as we may have thought.
No, and we'll get into that quite a bit here whenever we get Josephine in the picture.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, that was just kind of my piece on Mary Antoinette, the lady from Austria. Not to paint her as some sort of hero, but just kind of to try to help understand in the transition from King Louis the 15th to the 16th and Mary Antoinette, somebody who has kind of been painted as a villain in history
Hmm.
for the most part. Um, she was living life, dude. Not that she didn't do anything wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that she was living life and probably a time that she shouldn't have been living life.
Very fair point. Um, but she was living life, and that kind of pissed people off, like you were saying, to the point where in 1789, because of the whole financial crisis and disputes over like a voting procedure, because to vote you had to show up in person to a specific something or other at a specific time, and like if you weren't right there, like you weren't making it in time for you to vote.
Oh yeah.
It's more complex than that, but there was a lot of just the voting disparities. This I'm gonna edit that out, man. That word.
Disparity. You're fine. No,
Thank
keep
you.
that part in. Dude, I like when you
No,
do the blah,
dude.
blah, blah, blah.
But they get so frustrated that that third estate there, they form this what's called the National Assembly, and that's a huge step towards that. That's our Continental Congress. You
Yep.
know,
Yep.
they call our what we would call the Continental Congress. You know, one and two in the Continental Army, like they formed the National Assembly. So that's a huge step forward towards the revolution.
Yeah, I think it's important when you bring that up to note that the third estate really just kind of shouldered the burden as far as taxes and
Oh
finances are
yeah,
concerned for the entire country.
oh yeah, and like we had brought up earlier, the American Revolution just proved the point that you can overthrow a monarchy and set up a super prosperous, like democratic or republican, small r, uh,
Yeah.
government. Yeah, I had Republican government, and that's why we end up.
Democratic Republic.
Yeah, we'll see how this turns out. I'm pretty sure it ends with "Vive l'Empereur."
I think it does end with that. I don't know if we need to see how this turns out. I think that all of us have a general understanding of history, and we know how this turns out.
Oh yeah. Um, but to bring it back to Napoleon, like during this time, Napoleon supported the revolution, particularly its emphasis on like meritocracy, which kind of like he was a huge fan of all of the people that he loved to read about. Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar, and they earned what they got in the sense of prestige. Like we know them because of their great deeds. So someone, instead of being born into, you know, a general's position because your dad was some general some time ago, and it's just kind of handed to you, you have to earn what you get. It's from your merit. Which, him being a young officer and obviously not speaking Latin enough to get into the clergy, he's going to just straight up want to be meritoriously promoted.
Well, yeah, it speaks
Um,
to his humble beginnings, and we've talked about humble beginnings before on this
yeah,
podcast.
yeah, and his mom died pretty early as well, and so he did have pretty humble beginnings, even though he was born in the gentry class. Um, but his value of meritocracy actually is like what really gave him like the gall to promote some pretty significant victories early on in his career. The first one was the Battle of Toulon in 1793. And what's really cool about this battle is it's a major French port. So a majority of the French Republic's fleet is actually at this port, tied up behind a British blockade. And the town itself was taken over, town, port, and the shipyard was taken over by the British. And the reason that this is so significant is the French Republic is fighting not only the British, but also the Royalists. So they're fighting this two-fronted kind of like they're fighting amongst themselves in a civil war, and then they're fighting the British, which the French and the British hate each other, and they have since forever. Um, and honestly, I'm not still too sure, even though two world wars have happened, that they still don't hate each other deep down in their soul. But time and time again, we're going to see the French and the British collide.
Yeah, so and I don't mean to cut you off on that.
Yeah.
So at this point, during Toulon, has the revolution kind of already started?
Yeah, I would say I believe it's about 2 or 3 years deep now.
Okay, so
Um,
the British at this point are just kind of taking advantage of a fragile France, so to say.
Essentially, so they're trying to weaken the kingdom of France, um, and pretty much just lock them into being on the continent, if that makes any sense. Just
Yep.
staying right there by Spain. And so Toulon was a big asset to the French Revolution, or what I'm going to call the French from now on, because they do take over. Louis the 16th gets his head chopped off, um, by the guillotine. I feel like everybody knows about the French Revolution and the guillotine. I
Yep.
feel like they go
Lots
hand
of
in
heads
hand.
rolled. Lots of heads
Lots of
rolled.
heads rolled. Um,
Marie
which
Antoinette's head
goes.
rolled, I believe.
So I
So
read.
I've been told. So I've been
Yeah.
told.
um, but what's really cool about the Battle of Toulon is Napoleon essentially really loves artillery. So he snuck up to the fort. He took over some sleeping British. They were all high and mighty on the crown and long live the king and all that bull honky bullshit. And Napoleon snuck up on them, charged them on top of the fort, overtook their own cannons, brought his pretty ladies with him with some heated shot. And for those of you who aren't familiar with what heated shot is where he essentially takes a cannonball and heats it up really hot and then shoots it, and then it pretty much explodes because it's so hot from not only being heated up but being expelled from the cannon, and it's just like dragon's breath. So he took those, and they act as mortars, just FYI. So high angle, dropping down,
Low mortars.
low mortars. Miss those guys.
Yeah, yeah.
Miss those guys. Um, but yeah, so he took over Toulon by barely setting foot into the city. He just took over the fort that overlooked the port because that crippled the British blockade and pretty much sent everybody running. And it was like this most massive victory for him early on in his career, and it kind of showed how strategic he was. Like his good generalship uh, presented itself very early on. And at the age of 24, he went from, well, before 24, obviously, he went from second lieutenant to captain. He was a captain at the Siege of Toulon. And then after the battle, at the age of 24, he was promoted to brigadier general.
Yep.
So this dude made rank off of his own merit very, very quickly. And, like I said, it highlights his tactical brilliance and marked essentially was the beginning of his rise into power. With the monarchy like abolished, this was pretty much the French Republic's like first like victory over a foreign adversary. But it kind of got really weird because there was a bunch of royalists inside the city. And I'll use the term royalists. I got some vocab words in here that I'd be more than happy to share for all of my students out there.
Yep.
Um, but what a royalist is somebody who's obviously loyal to the crown, believes that the Bourbons should remain in power, and that the French Revolution is just bullshit. They got their navy back. He got his army, and what this really did was set himself up for what the National Assembly wanted him to do next, which was take over Italy. Small feat, whatever.
Yep.
It's chill.
Yeah.
It's chill. So
We already took Corsica. Let's go.
yeah, just straight up just assigned to the Army of the Alps, and then transferred to the Army of Italy. Took over Toulon with that army, and got him kind of like seen in a way. He was just someone from the military at this point, before the battle, and then after that, he kind of caught the eye of Robespierre, which is the leader essentially of the French Revolution. He leads the National Assembly, gives him the biggest voice, and puts Napoleon on the map. And that's just where it all kind of goes.
Well, so I think it's
I don't
important
want
to
to
know
say
what
downhill, but uphill.
Yeah, so I do think it's important to note when you bring up the Royalists of Toulon, and just to kind of give our listeners and viewers a scope, is that really the Royalists kind of invited the British and the Spanish into the city in the first place, and just kind of gave the port because right now France
Yeah,
is in complete unrest. There's still people
yeah,
that oppose this newly found republic after the beheading of all the royalty and
and then some.
a pissing on the divine right of kings, if you will.
Yeah, no, like absolutely. They Man, there's a lot of people that just got murdered, man. Like I don't know how else to
Yes.
say it. Like,
Yeah, I mean it's you look back and it's a devastating point in French history where we just see very much like the Russian Revolution at the end of World War One, where you just see the eradication of an entire, really a seat of power, which includes all affiliates and all sub powers, and they pretty much just told them, "Hey, your day in the sunshine's done. We're taking over. Off with your head."
yeah,
Heads will roll.
heads did roll. Um, so Napoleon got tasked, and we're going to take a step away from the French Revolution,
Yep.
because that's just kind of going on in the background, right? Like
Yep.
I mainly focused on Napoleon,
Oh,
um,
absolutely.
and he used the revolution as a tool, not as a purpose.
Yep.
Um, and what I mean by that is he used his ambition more than actual ideals. Obviously, he did believe in a meritocracy. He proved it himself, and that's what kind of gave him his sense of divine intervention, I'll say, or his destiny, or fortune's good favor, however you want to put it. In his mind, he was destined for greatness, and he made sure that destiny was not wrong. So he was tasked with taking over Italy. But before we get to the war, we got to get to the woman. Yeah, this is where she comes in.
Josephine.
Yeah, I'm gonna butcher her name. All right, we're gonna call her Josephine. That's what everybody knows her as. But she was born Marie Joseph Rose Tachir de la Pagrie in
I think you did.
1763 in
I think you did
Martinique.
great. Yeah, I think you did great.
I don't even know if I pronounced it right. I just put kind of like a cheese accent on it.
Dude, I think you did great. Now you do have to give the city back because I did interrupt you because I was so flabbergasted by how well you pronounced that I
Thank you.
interrupted where she's from.
It's the bourbon. Um, makes me speak French.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
She was born in 1763 in Martinique, which
yeah.
is
Okay.
will just it's pretty much her estate. And she was a widow of a guillotined aristocrat,
Oof.
Alexandre de Mosch. No, see now you said I did great on the first one. Now I can't do the second one.
You got this one.
Alexandre de Beauharnais.
That sounds great.
Yeah,
I think you did
thanks, dude.
fantastic the first time.
Um, and they had two children, Eugene and Hortense. And
Sammy
so,
speaks French.
does she really?
Yeah,
Dude,
a
why
little
the hell
bit.
is she not on the podcast with us?
Sammy's probably cussing me from the other room right now.
But she had two kids with him, Eugene and Hortense. Um, and she moved in like really influential social circles in Paris, and was known like around the city for her charm and her sophistication and her presence and the way she carried herself and moved around a ballroom. Like it was all really elegant. But because she was the wife of a guillotined aristocrat, she was thrown in prison. Um, because that's just what you do. You
Yep.
throw the aristocrats in prison because why not? And while in prison, she was very provocative,
Promiscuous.
promiscuous.
I like that.
I like that
Promiscuous
better. Yeah,
girls.
yeah. Um, but there was a reason for that. Women who were pregnant weren't allowed to be guillotined until they gave birth. So every woman who was in prison during this time was like actively trying to have a baby. So
Okay.
I mean, they were just like, "Oh, you're a French soldier, have me!" Like, like it was just anyone and everyone,
Dude.
just yeah, just to try to get pregnant.
Hey, it worked out for some of those in the Salem witch trials that we talked about. Being
Hey,
pregnant.
yes, sir.
Some of them, not all of them.
But I'm gonna if they're witch, it would be the spawn of Satan. Why would we not want to? But they conflicting principles, man.
It is very much conflicting principles.
Anyway,
But
we're not
I'm
going to
sorry,
get
we're
into
getting off topic.
that. She was eventually introduced to Napoleon in 1795 through Paul Barras, a powerful politician and actually Josephine's at the time lover. So she had married for love the first time, and her husband got executed. So we see how she marries the second time for political motivations, not because she wants any political power, but she wants a more comfortable life. She wants something that's going to elevate her status and be like a sure thing. It doesn't matter about love, right? She's marrying for security. Napoleon at the time was still a rising star. Obviously, just became a 24-year old brigadier general, only in the army for 6 years at this time. Dude, imagine.
Nuts. Absolutely
Nuts.
nuts.
Go take Italy.
Yeah.
Like
We don't see
nuts.
brigadier generals until like 40 or 50 now.
Dude, that's fine.
I mean, there's some younger than that. Don't get me wrong, there's some younger than that. But like, dude, brigadier general before like your 19 or 20 year mark, dude, outrageous.
Dude, I'm
You're doing great.
no, I'm looking up how the average age of a brigadier general is right now.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Throw it in there, man.
Hmm. Mid to late 40s. 47 is the average right now.
Yep. I think I was pretty fucking spot on.
Yeah, you were, buddy. Good job.
Yeah.
Good job. Um, so they ended up getting together, and like I said, Josephine's looking for something that's more stable and secure. So Napoleon's completely just dumbfounded, awestruck, star eyes, thump a thump a thump a thump a thump, like googly eyes at her,
Yep.
like right off rip. And so they got married on March 9th of 1796, just 2 days before he left to lead the Italian campaign. Um, and we know that he was, super infatuated, just completely intoxicated with this girl because he wrote her incessantly. Um,
No, that's not Momo. That's Uncle Matt, dude. You know who that is.
Come
Come
on
on, man.
now.
You're interrupting the pocket. We're gonna leave this in there though.
Um, so he wrote her incessantly, and she just kind of like, I think I'm gonna have to look at it later, but I do think she only wrote him 3 times
Oof.
on the Italian campaign. If it's more than that, it's not much more than that. Like she did not do right back much.
Oh my God. And almost every relationship one loves more.
Oh yeah, definitely Napoleon
Yep.
loved her way more at this time. That does this. So we're gonna be sprinkling in some Napoleon Josephine stuff in there because this dude was like the stereotypical like shittily married lance corporal.
Yep.
He's off fighting in all of these wars and campaigns and like writing about all of his accomplishments, and she's over getting just absolutely
Oh, stop. Railed?
by politicians and
Oh
other
no.
gentry. Yeah.
Oh
um
no. We
yeah,
thought
dude,
Mary
it's
Antoinette was a cuckold. Or
oh
sorry, we thought
man.
King Louis the 16th was a cuckold.
Yeah, dude. Well, Napoleon's not chill with it. Let me let me point that out. But while
Oh,
both
dear
of
God.
while both of them were um not faithful in their marriage, at the beginning it was Josephine who was unfaithful, and later on, when Napoleon is more worried about having an heir to continue his dynasty, he becomes unfaithful.
Yep. Yep.
But we'll get to that in due time. Um, while on the Italian campaign, he does learn of her infidelity, though, and it is one of like the hardest took things of his life up to this point, because he is so just absolutely infatuated with her.
Enamored.
Just
Enamored.
yeah, yeah. But he's got a whole war to be fighting, um, and that would be the Italian campaign. All right. Well, I think that's actually a really good place to stop. We covered his early humble-ish beginnings, learning how to read and write French. He comes from Corsica, not even French. Oh, did we go over his height?
We did not go over his height. I tell you what, let's talk about his height. Yeah, screw it. Let's talk about his height in the outro. Let's talk about his height in the
All right.
outro.
So everyone knows that Napoleon's just this tiny dude, right? Everyone's heard that myth, heard that legend, or whatever you want to call it. But he was actually 5'4" by French feet or Paris feet at the time, which opposed to our 12-inch foot, they actually had a 13-inch foot. So a dude wasn't 5'4"; he was actually estimated to be 5'7" to 5'9", which is literally the average height of men in America today. So
Yeah,
he's not even a short dude.
I mean, to be fair, when I talk to you and Richard, I oftentimes feel like a toddler that you guys are like looking down on when you and
It's
Richard, when I'm
fair.
talking to you guys.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like this baby toddler just putting my hands out, like gripping towards you, like daddy, daddy, hold me. Right. So I'm 5'9", and my wife's 5'8". She's gonna hit me with something in the back of the head right now. She flipped me off the back of the camera. For those of you watching on YouTube, you saw it. It's abuse.
It's
But with
abuse, he says.
with that being said, you're right. He's even for that point in time, like the height, the 6 foot and above, it really wasn't as much of a thing. So
Yeah, no.
I don't know where this myth came from.
I think it was just because everyone just said he had tiny man syndrome.
Well, I do imagine my Napoleon as like those old school, like early 2000s Whopper commercials that had like the baby hands
The
holding the
baby
Whopper.
hands
Yeah,
commercials. Yeah,
yeah, dude.
dude.
That's how I imagine my Napoleon is the baby hands holding the Whopper.
Dude, I haven't thought about that commercial in years, dude.
Dude,
But
I'm just reigniting old memories, man. So, with that being said, I'll let you talk about what we're going to talk about next episode. Again, to our listeners, we're going to start releasing episodes about once every 2 weeks. We're going to record ahead of time and release them over time.
yep, that just gives us a little bit more cushion. You looking for a job, me back in school, and all that jazz. Because I absolutely hated not releasing anything for like what 2 months now.
Ah, dude, the holidays and everything, it hurt.
Oh
It
man, it was
hurt.
crazy. But yeah, next episode we're gonna go over his Italian campaign, the repercussions of that for France, Napoleon himself, and Europe as a whole. It's where we start seeing coalitions. Yeah, and there's a couple of them that come up because not only does everybody hate France, but soon everybody will hate just Napoleon.
Yep.
Um, so we're gonna see the first coalition get formed. We're gonna see his Egyptian campaign. Some cool stuff he found down there
And the rest of the
about
Italian campaign too.
yeah the
Yep.
whole Italian campaign actually.
Yep.
The
Yep.
Italian campaign, um, the Egyptian campaign, which I'm gonna blow your mind on. I'm just a forewarning.
I'm
Um,
ready to have my mind blown.
and then we'll probably leave off next episode when he makes his way back to France. So,
Sounds good to me, man. Let's cover it.
all right, we'll see you guys on the next one.
We'll see you next time, Matt. Love you as always, buddy.